Díomh a cóide agus fáilte. Hello friends and welcome to the Grá Mòr podcast. Elaine is Anam Dom. My name is Elaine Doyle and it is with deep heartfelt gratitude that I welcome you to this sacred space. Hello friends. Ma anam cóide conna sa tátu. How are you on this wintry, frosty, sunny, magical, misty day in Ireland or wherever you are in the world? I hope you're well and I hope you are surrendering to the energies right now. What a magical, intense time on planet Earth. You're surrendering and remembering the truth of who you are as a divine human. Yeah, lads and ladies, it's been a while. Apologies. I've been in a magical portal the last couple of months since I last sat to share with you all, which I will talk about throughout this podcast, I'm sure. But I'm just really happy to be back sitting in front of the microphone in my heart and being a vessel for the soul and the wisdom of this land, hopefully. Opening myself up. Even with a stuffy nose, I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. There's a lot clearing and purging happening because it is Samhain, it is winter, and it is a time of clearing and purification. So apologies if it sounds a bit stuffy, but something I've really learnt the past couple of months is that there'll always be some sort of process, internally, externally. It is the way of life as a human, but sometimes we just have to be the conscious awareness behind it all and just show up and trust the soul and the heart. So here I am feeling like there's, as I said, clearing happening in the inner landscape, but just excited to sit and share from the heart all that needs to be shared in this time together over the next hour or so. I don't know, but we'll see what the feminine heart and womb and this land needs to transmit at this time. So before we dig in, as always, I'm just inviting us to take a moment, take a breath together here. So whatever you are doing, or if you're being or walking or tending to your home, your heart, just an invitation right now, Accordia, to be in the body. To be in the body. A wise man recently said to me, the body is closer to God than the mind. So we just invite some conscious awareness into the sacred body and into the sacred heart. That very important journey from our head and our mind down into the heart. Táim ima Chroí anish. Táim ima Chroí anish. I am in my heart now. Táim ima Chroí anish an talún nefa. I am in my heart now on this sacred land, at this pivotal time on planet Earth where the times are changing and turning. From a time of darkness, we move into a time of light, of new earth, of birthing heaven on earth, of creating a whole new way of being in the world as humans, as women, as men, to protect and love the children and to raise a new generation of people who are close to the land, to nature, to the divine, to God, to their hearts. And the only way that we can do that is to lead from the heart. So for the next hour or so, just allowing yourself to reside here in this sacred place of the heart, where an infinite well of love and wisdom resides. And the invitation is to sit in this place of awareness and consciousness behind the words and stories and musings that I share. I feel the most important thing is just this presence. Just allowing ourselves to be fully here in this space together. And allowing my voice to bring us back to our hearts, to our bodies, and to the present moment that will never be again. We live in a world that is full of distractions and overstimulation. And the power really is protecting our energy and bringing it back in, slowing down and being with the magic within our own bodies, hearts and souls. So just that is my intention for us to be here now. Be here now. And whenever you feel, distracted, because there is things we have to do, just allowing the breath to bring you back to this here and now. So, my friends, what a time. What a time to be alive. And there is a lot moving in my heart and body and mind. And I really hope that me sharing here is a balm to perhaps your processes and purifications at this moment, because I feel for those of us that are awake and on the healing path, we're all feeling similar vibrations and energies. And it is so important for us to share our story with one another, because we don't feel so alone. And that reminds me, I mentioned in my last podcast episode that I was going on a meditation retreat. I didn't want to say too much about it because at that point I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it to the airport. Because I hadn't left Ireland or the Celtic lands in over 6 years. And I didn't really tell anybody, just my family. But anyways, I did go. I went to a Kriya Yoga meditation retreat in Greece I was there for about 10 days. And one of the biggest balms for my soul, there was many, but was been around like-minded community. And it just really, really helped me relax into my processes even deeper. And I know I've mentioned the importance of community so much over the past couple of years, but it doesn't get old, John O'Donoghue's book, Anam Cara, talks about the vital necessity of the Anam Cara in the external, of course within ourselves as well, but in the external. And as I shared this at the end of the retreat, like there's a lot of amazing community in Ireland. However, this kind of like obsession with meditation, I hadn't ever really been around a group of people that big that were like into meditation as much as me. Now, I have been on retreats in Ireland, but they were silent retreats, so we weren't sharing. This wasn't a silent retreat. It was a meditation retreat, and like everybody had no fixed abode and was just living day to day, week to week. And I just realised, lads, that being in Ireland for the past 6 years, close to my ancestral lands and everything, and I've shared this before, that I actually, when I left Ireland and went, far away to Greece, it just made me realise that actually I was getting sucked into expectations, because I'm a woman of a certain age. And I remember being out on the cliff in Greece and been like, what the fuck have I been tying myself into back home? There's just no need to allow those expectations or conditioning to rule me anymore. I just felt this sense of freedom again. And this is the importance, lads, of pilgrimages. I know I've shared this so many times. And getting away from your homeland and your ancestral land, even just for a short period. I mean, I lived in Australia for 5 years, well, 4.5 years. I've travelled the world, and obviously it's been 6 years since I left the Celtic lands, as in Ireland and the British Isles, and I just realised how important it actually is for me to leave frequently. And I actually do feel emotional about it, because I think there's a freedom when our soul is allowed to soar and fly. And I just remembered who I am. I am not here to live like everyone else. I am not here to fulfill my parents' expectations. I am not here to continue on the separation and the fear-based living. I'm just not here for it. I've been around like-minded people who are, going to India to meditate in an ashram for the winter and travelling from one sacred place to another. I was like, oh yeah, this is important for me. I don't care what age I am. And my biological clock bullshit as a woman. My mission is to awaken to my full potentiality wherever I need to go for that, whatever cords I need to cut, whatever I need to do. That is most important. That is most important. And there was just this freedom, this cutting of cords again. And obviously, one of my greatest loves is Ireland, and one of the greatest gifts in this lifetime is being Irish and living in Ireland, of course. However, it's also where there's ancestral traumas and pains, and we need to step away from that sometimes. I was talking to my friend Elise about this, and she lives in Wales, and she at the same time had pilgrimaged abroad to Malta, which wasn't that far away from where I was in Corfu, and she was feeling the same, the importance of having a trip far away. And honestly, lads, if I had the resources at that time, I probably just would have went to India or Australia for a while. But I had things to come back for, But also the sun. It was 22 degrees and sunny. It was October, so I went in October, and I realised I'm a Pisces. I lived in Australia for a reason. The sun actually is the heart of the universe, I feel. It's not just about lying in the sun. It has deep codes for us if we allow it in. So I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that trip. It was absolutely incredible, and it's definitely given me a fire for next year. Depending, I would love to go to India and go away, far away again for a few weeks or months. Who knows? I mean, the thing is, like, we live within the mystery when we're on this path, or we can choose to live in the mystery. I don't have a choice. I said yes to it many, many years ago, and it's here in my life, the mystery. I don't know. I don't know. 3 words, when put together, can bring us a lot of solace. Just allowing yourself to say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the future. For me, that gives me a sense of calm, because we live in a society and world where we're meant to know, you know, your 5-year plan. And you're meant to know the future and what you're going to do. I don't have a clue. In terms of the external, I don't know what that looks like from year to year. I have a very strong knowing of my mission and what things that I might need in the external to support that. You know, a piece of land with a forest to homeschool my children, a very supportive partner, you know, all these things. But how they come to us is very unknown and uncertain, and it's not something we can micromanage. So I don't know, but there is a knowing that leaving for a while would be very, 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 very beneficial for me. And again, it just reminded me of the reason why I lived in Australia and the freedom that I felt there, you know, because being a daughter, you don't, and a Pisces, I don't want to worry my parents, or, you know, it has been difficult for them at times because it's so unconventional. And, but I realised, you know, it's not my job to make sure they're okay. They chose me as well, you know, and of course, I love them and I want them to be well. But a healer did talk to me about this years ago. You know, it's really, you need to cut cords with any people or situations that are holding you back from being your truest self. And they need you to be your truest self, because that's why they chose you as well. So it's just seeing unconsciously how I've been still trying to be a certain way. And it's just so far from the mission and why I'm here. It's really not what I'm here for, to conform. And when I read my human design, it was all about that. You're really here to pave a new way. And I had a magical encounter with a hare last week. I shared it in my Triple Spiral Healing newsletter. And just on that, I'll leave the link for my newsletter, to sign up to my newsletter, because I didn't have the energy to sit down and record a podcast, but I did have the energy to write some newsletters. So for me, it's going to be a dance between sitting down and recording a podcast, writing a newsletter or whatever, because it's hard to do it all. Like one cycle I had to choose, okay, I'm going to put a new offering out there and I'm going to do a few newsletters. This idea that we can do all of it, the podcast, the social media, it's for me, it's just not possible. And, you know, I see people talking about utilising AI to help them to do all of it. I'm like, if we're having to outsource like that, maybe we're just not meant to be doing all of it. I just can't keep up with all that. So, it's also really nice to write as well. Again, I love writing. But anyways, I was writing about the hare encounter, and I won't get into all of that right now, but the hare brought me into a big portal of grief and shedding. And I came out a few days later, which is now a few days later, feeling really reborn. So the hare really represents death and rebirth. And let me just make sure this is still recording, yeah. The hair, the rebirth. I was sharing a meditation yesterday that I feel this fire of the new earth right now. And I know I mentioned that last winter as well. On the lead up to the winter solstice, I always feel the vibrancy and energy of the new earth and the golden age present. It's really, really palpable feeling right now. And what that looks like for me was I was in the sauna a couple of days ago, and the sauna is probably the only time where I'm around people that I don't know. And it's probably the only time I'm around people right now, besides the person I live with. And so haven't been in social situations really since the retreat. So my only opportunity to meet other people. And I was talking to a guy, and he was just saying how he's doing study. He's like, I don't know, about 30. But he doesn't really like it, and he's not sure. And he was like, maybe I should just go travelling first. And I just noticed myself being so strong. I'm like, we're not here to suffer. You really need to, or, an invitation for you to really do something you love. And it was just I had no capacity to entertain the fear-based life. And I was saying to my friend that, actually, I need to be careful now about who I talk to, because I can't hold back. I don't seem to have a filter at the moment. I can't support the fear-based narrative. And that's not fair, because people mightn't be ready to hear the truth. Because I know there's no such thing as right or wrong, but I do feel there's a divine truth, which is love, to live a life based on love from our hearts. And my views can be seen as extreme in a way to people who are in this kind of hamster wheel. And I'm just not able to entertain it, lads, anymore. And I was thinking, I remember when I turned 30 and I was crying on the bus to work, and it was my 30th birthday. I had a little celebration down in the old Headache and Sale, which is a magical place. And I remember just crying, but I just don't like my life. I hate living in Dublin and everything. And I wish I had met someone in the sauna who grabbed my hand and said, you don't need to be doing this. You don't need to be living a life of suffering. There's an alternative way of living. I really wish I had met that person. So I suppose I need to be that, or it's not that I need to be that person. It's just automatically happening now. I just can't entertain the bullshit. Why 5-year-olds are getting up in the dark when it's cold to sit in a classroom for 5 hours or 6 hours a day. It's madness, isn't it? And, some people listening, their kids will be in school, and that's your path and that's the path. I'm not saying it's wrong, but for me personally, I can only speak for myself, that I knew I was in a state of suffering for most of my life. I was like, I didn't want to be in school. I knew there was something not quite right, and witnessing all my friends' kids who are homeschooled, it's like, oh my God, there's a way. There's another way. And I'm so excited to create that life for children eventually, when God's plan becomes clearer on that. But I think we're so hardwired. We've been so hardwired to suffer. We've been so hijacked. We don't even realise that it's not right. That's just the way. And I tell my mum I rest and I don't work when I'm bleeding. She's like, well, I just had to get on with it. And it's like this. We've been so hardwired. We've been absolutely hijacked, lads, as humans. We've been absolutely hijacked. And maybe I shared this in the last episode, so I do repeat myself. If you're a new listener, I have a habit of repeating myself. But my brother, he was saying he went to secondary school in Borris, which is a beautiful town in Carlow with Mount Leinster in the background, but he still hates the drive towards Borris because he hated secondary school so much. And I said, that's why I'll be homeschooling, Shane, because it shouldn't be like that. And he finally got it. He was like, I get you. I actually get you. You're right. So I think we have to be way shores of the heart-led life. And I'm not saying that my life is easy all the time, but it is very much led from the heart, and there is a lot of suaveness, agus síocháin, agus grá, peace and love and harmony within my body. So, yeah, going on a bit of a rant there about that. But I think just being around like-minded community in Greece made me realise, oh my God, yes, Elaine, keep holding the flame for the new earth, for creating heaven on earth, because that's why you're here, and all the rest doesn't matter. For people's expectations and disappointments, and I don't care. I do not care. I really don't. This identity and this addiction to materialism and form, and no. And in many ways, lads, it's more intense in Ireland than it is in Australia. Like, for a small example, is that like everybody, like so many people in Australia, had like really old second-hand cars, and a lot of people had a really good work-life balance. Here it's like, everyone has new cars on finance and works an unhealthy dynamic with work. So it's like I was reminded of all those things when I went away, that like there is a lot of materialism here. And I'm not here for it. And that is, it can be a courageous thing sometimes, even in the spiritual community. I mean, I've talked about all this stuff before, spiritual wealth, and, if you're spiritual, you should have all this financial abundance. And what's really important, and I do think automatically things come to us when we're in that state of abundance within with God. But it's not always how we think it will look. Abundance comes in many ways, and that reminds me, I suppose this lineage of yoga that I went to. So I mentioned I read Autobiography of a Yogi, one of the best spiritual books ever. And I read the book and I was like, I need to learn this yoga practice. And I Googled a retreat and I found the one in Greece and I went. And so just to say, right, yoga actually means union with God. And in its essence, it's meditation, not yoga postures. It's not meant to be a fitness class or stretching. Now, I know in the West it is, which serves a function, because no matter what, yoga will awaken us in some form. But its truest essence is to unify with God and to be in a meditative awareness state. And I talked about it again in my last podcast episode, but a lot of the yoga here in the West hasn't resonated really at all. I was like, this is not how I remember yoga to be. This exercise class where I've actually gone to a class and felt more dysregulated afterwards. And I did share as well last time that yoga did really help me awaken when I was in the day job and I burnt out, and I practice a lot of yin yoga, which is slow and meditative. So I will link the man that I did my retreat with in Greece. Now I wouldn't call it a retreat, it was boot camp. It was tough work. It was really intense. And his name is Basu. He's Danish, but he lived in India for 20 years and he still goes there every year for a certain amount of time of the year he's there. He's an incredible teacher, and he's a disciple of a guru that is a direct his guru was a disciple of Yogananda, who was the man who wrote the book Autobiography of a Yogi. So when I seen that on his website, I booked a retreat. Like that's not like me to go on a retreat with someone I don't know anything about, but I just knew he was embodied. And just to share, lads, I do not receive teachings from someone unless I think they're the real deal. That's why I haven't went to any yoga for years in Ireland. And I'm not saying there isn't amazing yoga teachers. There is. But I needed to receive the yoga teachings from someone who spent a lot of time in India. It's like, so it's not a judgment. It's just a reality that like you can go and do your course in Ireland, but it's, if you can imagine, people in America were teaching how to be an Irish pagan priestess, but had never been to Ireland, never spent any time there. Their teachings are going to be different than if you receive the teaching of a woman who has lived in Ireland for 20 years and has practiced the medicine on the land. It's a different experience. There's no right or wrong, because you'll receive the medicine that you need. But I just knew I needed to receive it from someone who'd been there. And Corfu is a very, very sacred piece of land. I've been there before. And on a side note, I got to the airport. I was at my gate really early. And guess what? The gate that I was flying to Corfu from was, when I was there early, the gate was going to Kerry. And I was like, oh, obviously I lived in Kerry. I was like, maybe I meant to go to Kerry. But I didn't get on that flight, obviously. And when I got to Corfu a couple of days before the retreat, I was like, this reminds me a lot of Kerry. And I realised that the Michael Apollo ley line, which is a very sacred ley line that starts in Skellig Michael in Kerry, runs right through Greece, right through Corfu, the land I was on. So there was a lot of different grid work and sacred land work happening at the same time. But I can see why he runs retreats there. It's a very sacred place. And I would just like to share some of what I received from that, coming back to the yin yoga, or the Kriya Yoga. So like, and this is, I'm paraphrasing what he shared with us as a group, right? That, the yoga postures, the asanas, so yoga postures, here, we do them so we balance out our chakras and our energies, so it's easier to meditate. And I was like, okay, this is why I'm here, because I love meditation. And I know that there's a lot of energy in my body that needs to be cleared out and balanced. And when we practice yoga in that way, it's easier to unify with God. Does that make sense? So it's not to necessarily make you fit or stretchy or whatever, flexible. It's to balance out your energy. So it's easier to unify with God. And I felt like I was practicing yoga for the first time in my life. And it was incredible. And I found this huge love for it. And I did have the love for it when I was in Dublin, but it was yin yoga. And that's closer to the original, I would say, than like hatha yoga that isn't practiced in a slow way, because it's slow. So for example, right, what I mean is, have you ever been to a yoga class and you can't keep up with the postures and it's up, down, downward dog, in, out, and you're like, oh, I can't do this. And you feel dysregulated. When we were practicing yoga on the retreat, lads, we would pause for about 2 minutes after every single posture. So if you're a yoga teacher, I would really recommend practicing that with your students or training with Bazu, because that is a complete game changer. It actually makes yoga a meditative, grounding, regulating practice. Now, I've only done a week training, so I don't know everything about this, but I do know how it felt in my body and has really helped me massively. Like, why am I talking about this? Because, as I said at the start, our body is closer to God than our mind. I've talked about this a lot over the last year, especially, maybe 2 years, regulating the body and the nervous system, and how that helps us to connect with the divine, with source, with God, whatever you want to call it. So the body is the doorway. Angelo, who I've mentioned many times on this podcast, says the nervous system is the holy grail, is the doorway to heaven. It's because when we regulate our nervous system, we find safety within our bodies. And it's only when we feel safe and regulated that we can really unify with the Creator. So I'm not just talking about this because I went over and did it in Greece. I'm talking about it because it's life-changing, absolutely life-changing stuff. And I've practiced yoga basically every day since I came back. And yoga nidra. And I know we all know yoga, right? But it's like, it's different when you actually viscerally understand and feel how it's helping shift your consciousness and your awareness, you know? I think one of the reasons why I haven't sat down to record is maybe I've been integrating the whole retreat, and it would have been hard to sit down and talk about it when it hasn't been integrated, and I'm still integrating it. So just understand that I'm still integrating it. Yeah. So let me just take a pause there. So I remember I got back from Greece, and again I was in the sauna and I was chatting to someone, and I was talking that I was in a meditation retreat in Greece. I meet a lot of very, very, very conscious people in the sauna, lads. Why? Because conscious people do be looking after themselves. It's a great way to meet people, like really, 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 really cool people. It's such, again, the community, balm to the heart. And he was like, and how did you get on? Was it real zen? And I was like, no. I was like having to deal with all the shit inside my body. You know, people think that I might look really calm when I'm meditating, but actually having to really see what's in your inner landscape and stuck in your chakras, especially your lower chakras, where a lot of karma is why a lot of people don't meditate, because it's hard to look at all that. Well, it can be hard, but when we develop a practice where we're being the conscious awareness behind the process, it becomes a lot easier. So as I said, it was a boot camp, you know, and Basu is highly conscious and really helped us to dive into the depths of it, to see maybe what was blocking us from unifying with God. So I don't know how much of that I need to get into, but let's just say that out of a group of about 10 or 12, I think there was 12 of us, firstly as well, it's really nice to go somewhere where nobody knows you and you can just really be the student, you know? There's times when I go to stuff in Ireland and people just expect that I have it all together because I have a podcast and I do work, spiritual work. It's like, no, I am a novice when it comes to this, just as much as you are as well. You know, I've said that before. There's, things that I've accessed, levels of peace and heart-centered living, yes, but there's still a lot to be tended to there. So there was something really freeing about just going and being the student. And I think that was a big learning thing. I mean, I have massively done that. I've really allowed myself to be the student, lads. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people out there that might think they know yoga, but what if you allow yourself to be the student to see that actually maybe there's just 10% of it, you only know 10% of it. You know, when we're trying to be this like master of something, it takes decades. You know, the Druids trained for decades, and Basu didn't. He practiced yoga and was taught yoga for 10 years before he was a yoga teacher. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing a course and teaching straight away, because we learn as we go. But just allowing ourselves to be the student as well as the teacher is really important at this time of change, because there's many thousands of years of separation and disconnection in our lineage. So just really allowing myself to be the student. And out of about 10 to 12 people, there was a couple of us women who were really, you could see, I'll just speak for myself, really needing to clear out a lot. Let's just say that. And there was other people there who maybe haven't been on the path that long, but their energy field and chakras were fairly pure, like. And I was sitting there going, oh shit, like, There's a lot in here that has to be cleared out. And that's the path of the wounded healer. I've received trauma, so I'll alchemicalize it into power so I can show others how to do that. I know it, but it's hard when you have to sit with that. You know? So, excuse me. So I was brought into aspects of myself that I've probably been quietly trying to avoid. Of course, I have never tried to avoid it. That's the truth. But sometimes we need to be in a really safe container with an embodied practitioner or teacher that can really hold our hands through that. And I could literally be here for hours on that. How can I sum it up quickly? I don't know if I think I shared it in the extra bonus content, but I'll quickly share it here. I had a very profound experience this year in Glastonbury. I'd taken some chocolates that had THC. Is it THC? Anyway, kind of hemp oil in it. And was brought on a very intense journey, Glastonbury tour, into the unsafety in my body, in the lower chakras, this fear that someone was going to come after me and kill me. And had a similar experience on mushrooms last year, and a similar experience on a boat out to Skellig Michael on the AA portal last year, on safety in the body. Now, this isn't unusual. A lot of people have unsafety in the body. That's why they find it hard to sit and meditate. And I might have shared this before. When I was holding meditation classes in Kerry, I was getting dreams, and it was kind of spirit showing me why people find it hard to sit still. So my dream was that I was in a concentration camp, and I was a Jew and the Nazis were coming after me, and the fear that we hold in our bodies from collective ancestral trauma is real, and it's there. And I was reading, I always recommend this book, Eckhart Tolle and New Earth. Wintertime, perfect time to read it. And he talks about, he talks a lot about being in the body as a doorway to presence and to God as well. And he talks about how collective pain is held in all of our bodies. So even though my ancestors weren't in the concentration camps, I can still feel collective trauma or have that memory. And this isn't to just get denser, heavier and dark, but I think it's helpful to understand sometimes why it is hard to maybe sit still and to be with ourselves, because there's a lot there. So basically, my lower chakras, like, I felt very numb in my hips and my legs for many years, because this unsafety in our body leads to the flight or fight mode. So you're flighty, so you're running around, you're in overdrive, you're moving around a lot. And we start to lose sensation then in our hips and our legs and parts of our body because we're not fully present or conscious in them, if that makes sense. So when we were practicing the Kriya Yoga technique, which is a meditation practice where you're sitting and you're doing, I won't describe what Kriya Yoga is, because it's not fair for me to do that when it's not meant to be shared like this. It needs to be in the presence of a guru or a teacher. But the practice itself of Kriya Yoga brings you down into your lower chakras, down the back of the spine where a lot of karma can exist. And when you're doing deep breathing down there, it can really be a huge purification process. Because when we purify the lower chakras and clear it out, it's easier to sit in the third eye and experience deeper cosmic consciousness. So it's a deep, this is why you would be practicing yoga for many years, to purify out the system, if that makes sense. So I was brought into a lot of that lower karmic trauma in the lower chakras, which is just going to take, I don't know. I mean, it's not about how long it takes. It's showing up for yourself. But it was daunting at times, It was daunting to really be present with what is there. And just on that, it's not about how long it takes, because there's always going to be something present, definitely in our environment or the world, that is uncomfortable, or there's suffering in the world, and there's suffering and trauma within us. Probably the biggest thing I learned, lads, on this retreat, our boot camp, was it's about the conscious awareness behind our experience. Which I mentioned at the start, being the conscious awareness, being the observer. So, I think a lot, or I overthink things. What part of you knows you overthink things? Your higher self, your conscious awareness. And as someone who was on the retreat and experiencing a lot of, numbness and intense purification in the lower chakras, at one point I just got really attached to it and entangled in it. And when I remember sharing in the sharing circle and being like, I think I'm just too fucked up. And I didn't say those words, but I think I'm just too traumatized and I can't do it. And I'm in my mind a lot, and I've always been in my mind a lot, and I'm never going to be able to be calm. And I was just having a really intense day of it. And what my teacher was guiding me towards was, even when we sit and it's not peaceful, how can we still detach from that? To get me. So I'm noticing that my mind is busy. I'm noticing that there's a lot of pain in my body. When you hear somebody complaining, oh God, I'm really sick and it's absolutely awful, and I'm going to always be like this, and it's not fair. That's an entanglement, right? Another way of sharing is, I just noticed that my body is really tired at the moment and is purging a lot, but I trust the process. I'm having the same experience. I'm sick, but I'm not entangled with it. I'm being the conscious awareness behind it. Does that make sense? And the next day I shared, and I was in this place of, I'm noticing the conscious, I was being the conscious awareness. I was like, I'm just noticing that my body's a bit sore, but there was a peace. So he taught us that yoga and meditation is what's the word? You're disentangling from the mind and the suffering. I hope that makes sense. And that is the life skill, I feel, that leads to enlightenment. The Buddha said things on this about, it's not that all the negativity went away, but my relationship with that changed. So I suppose there was a part of me that had this unconscious expectation that I would go to this retreat and just be in blissful, cosmic consciousness and God unification. And it wasn't that. There was definitely moments of complete unification and calmness and peace. Right? But that too shall pass. So what he was showing us was, and my teacher in Ireland, I went on a lot of silent retreats here, she was teaching us that as well, but I hadn't really embodied it enough to really feel it, was that you're trying not to attach to good or bad. So I've had a really magical, blissful meditation there, and you like that. And if we, I mean, of course it's normal to like it, but if we overly attach to that, we suffer then when we meditate and we don't have that kind of experience. We're like, oh no, but I'm meant to be calm and sitting on God's lap and at peace. And then you're creating suffering for yourself because you're not experiencing that which you feel you should be. Does that make sense? So sometimes meditation or yoga or whatever your practice is, showing up, and maybe it's highly uncomfortable, but you're learning that there's a place of peace even behind that. And that reminds me of my first ever silent retreat in Ireland. And I went for 5 days. And at the end of it, I remember saying to my teacher, I felt like I was on heaven on earth. It was incredible. It really was profound for me. I remember saying to her, what I've learned this past few days is that, yes, there's a storm inside, but I'm learning to be the observer behind that. I did really feel that. I just lost it for a while after that, but that is a beautiful experience, because no matter what inner turmoil is happening, you realise there is a place of peace behind it. And that's what I'm here for, to help people to do that. But first I really, cultivating it myself more and more, which is there. So that was really some of the take-home messages of being with whatever is present, with non-judgment and compassion. Another thing that I will share as well, and maybe I've, again, talked about some of this stuff over the past episodes or years, whatever. But I ended up getting some, the teacher, Bazu, his partner, gave me a massage, but it was like the most spiritual massage, energy healing I've ever had. It was incredible on the retreat. And we were kind of reflecting on it afterwards, what was going on in my system. And Bazu summed it up perfectly. He was like, Elaine, you have a lot of Shakti energy. It just needs to be stabilised now, and it needs to be grounded. You have a lot of Shakti energy. And I'm saying this because I know a lot of women out there, they're saying, you have a lot of Shakti energy. So Shakti energy is that divine, feminine, creative life force energy, but it needs to be stabilised. So when she was giving afterwards, she's like, there's just so much energy here, but it needs to be grounded, because you need to come, literally need to come into your body more, into your legs, into your feet, ground the energy. And I've been trying to describe that to people in my life over the past couple of years, but I didn't know how to put it into words, because people were like, Elaine, you're so creative. There's so many offerings and so much work you can do. Like, why don't you do them? I'm like, I know I could literally write a book right now. I have enough not downloads, but reflections to write to record a podcast probably every day, and to write a poem every day, right? But it's not grounded, which means it dysregulates me to act on every creative idea I have. It needs to be stabilised and grounded. My energy needs to be grounded first. So it's been hard, especially as Pisces, like very creative, wanting to do this and that, and having to pull back. And that's probably why I haven't recorded a podcast, because I realise actually it's a lot of energy. And when I get talking, sometimes I can talk for hours, and that's too much for my nervous system when I'm not grounded or my energy's not stabilised. So my whole mission right now is to really ground my energy. So I've replaced a lot of journaling with a lot of, body work, yoga nidra. Still doing my meditating, but been in the sauna a lot, because that really stabilises my energy as well. So my focus is massively on the body. So a lot of Shakti energy that needs to be stabilised, because I don't want to create from a place of ungroundedness. It doesn't feel nice. So I hope that makes sense. It's hard when you have all these creative ideas and you have to pull back. And one of my mantras was, I don't need to act from every creative idea I have. And it reminds me of a lovely Dutch lady that was, she was at the retreat space in Greece. She wasn't doing our retreat. She was doing something like a 12-day silent retreat on her own. But Bazu was meeting with her every day. And I was asking her some reflections from her time. And she shared, I realised that I'm, what's the word? Extremely, not productive, but like efficient. I get a lot of things done, but that's actually not good. Like, women are not meant to be multitaskers and efficient, because sometimes that's burning out our bodies. Do you know what I mean? So this idea of how society wants to be like, oh yeah, I work full time and I raise 5 kids and I cook home meals and I get it all done. It's not really normal. And Teal Swan says it's actually impossible to do both well. So like this, excuse me, this dismantling of what actually means to be an efficient person or a creative person, like actually stabilizing and grounding ourselves, means that we might get a lot less done, but we're getting it done in a more grounded, stabilized way. Because this retreat was very integrative. It wasn't silent. We were around each other talking at meals and stuff. So instead of just having us meditate all the time, we had to try and bring the meditation into our daily activities. And that's the really important thing. Or else our meditation just becomes a freeze response where we're still for an hour and then we get up and we're dysregulated and we're in flight or fight. So we just went from freeze, another stress response, then to flight. It's about being calm in all our interactions. And I talked about my friend Anita in Kerry, who has 5 kids, and how present and grounded she was with her kids. That is her meditation practice, you know. It's not about sitting in the lotus position. It's about how conscious we can be in every moment and every activity. So I'm just tuning in to see what else needs to be reflected on that. Yeah, look, I could be here for hours reflecting on the retreat, but that would be too dysregulating for me and unstabilizing. You know what I'm saying? For me to talk for that long. So maybe I'll share another time or in the future. But yeah, that was really some of the take-home messages. But another thing is that, like, I suppose being around somebody who, he lived in India for 20 years, and I think he was in Thailand in a Buddhist ashram kind of meditation center for another 10 years. And when he was speaking about the mindset of people from the East who have, so like India and so on, who've actually growing up in a spiritual environment, as Westerners, we have to be very, very, very patient with our spiritual journey. I talked about this again in the last episode. But we've been, especially as Westerners, there's a lot of separation and disconnection through many lineages. You know, the indigenous cultures were wiped out a long time ago. In Ireland, it is a broken lineage, but it's now been remembered. But it wasn't been practiced in a lot of households for hundreds and hundreds of years. Indian spirituality has been, for example. So we have to be very patient as Westerners, and also realise that there's a lot of watering down over here, especially of yoga, for example. And seeking out people who have spent time there, or not knowing that even doing it in a kind of a exercise way will unconsciously probably lead to some sort of awakening anyway. So it's given us medicine, you know. It's absolutely phenomenal that there's probably a couple of yoga teachers now in every town holding classes. It's amazing. And at the same time, I think we need to be humble and devoted to making sure that we're carrying on lineages in an ethical way with deep integrity. You know, and allowing ourselves to be the students of people who have really embodied the medicine. That's always been really, really important for me. And even the woman who I did my priestess training with, who had been on the path most of her life, and she's now in her 60s, before she started teaching, you know. And And there has been a few people that I have learned from earlier on in my path who realised actually they're not holding the true embodiment of what they were teaching there and having to let go of that. I mean, a lot of us have had that, haven't we, on learning, even the spiritual stuff. And that's okay. It was meant at that time. There's no right or wrong. But as Westerners, just being very patient and compassionate with the journey. My grandkids, for example, will grow up with parents and grandparents who have had a deeper spiritual practice and connection and are living from their hearts. And their kids will have it. I know that. I'm devoted to that. It's happening. But for us, it's been different. And we have to be patient with that. And I think I just let go of any pressure on myself to have this or that or this. I mean, I said to people, I'll birth when I'm 50 if I have to, but I'm clearing and purifying as much as possible because motherhood is the ministry. My friend Elise and my other soul sisters, which I'm involved in right now, we're doing a whole container around how motherhood is the ministry. Creating a life where we can raise conscious children is why I am here. People are like, are you expectant? No, I'm not expectant. I'm not pregnant, lads. I'm preparing. It's the most important thing ever, and it's been absolutely hijacked. Anyways, I'm ramshouting on again now. Let me just take a little pause. Another note, winter. Let's just have some reflections on winter. It got very cold very quick here in Ireland. So the mother, the Cailleach, the goddess, is calling us in. Tend to your inner landscapes, lads. Let what needs to fall away and die go. Personally, even though I was, away in Greece for a bit in October, I found the adjustment to winter effortless this year. Last year it was like I found there was a little bit of an adjustment to how much I needed to slow down for winter. But now, because 2025 has been such an intense year energetically, there's been a lot of slowness anyways. So the adjustment to winter, I'm sure a lot of people found that as well. The adjustment to winter was quite effortless. And I now know from last year, saying no, like I wouldn't go out in the evenings, no to any events, anything like that. No. And I did go to Wicklow, lads, for a few days last year, and it wasn't good. It was too much. Last week. It was too much. It was too cold. It was too much. So I am hoping to venture out for winter solstice. Best day of the year. Love it. And that's it. Very quiet Christmas. Not going anywhere till March, I'd say. So just allowing yourself to say no. And even if you are going to have some busy Christmas time, just allowing yourself to focus on the breath and to be in the body. To find stillness even if there's a lot going on. So yes, I wanted to just share some winter reflections. I live in a tiny home with the only source of heating is the stove. So we know how cold it is. And I said this morning when I was meditating, I was like, there's the beauty about living in a small home with not much insulation is when it's winter. This is a short-term living situation, by the way. I wouldn't live like this forever. But it's a beautiful thing to be this close to nature and to know, okay, it's really frosty out. And I think that's just helping me to slow down even more when we know and it's really a call inwards. So just allowing yourself that time of slowness. Winters can literally allow us to have a metamorphosis of our being if we surrender. And for many of us, have been doing a lot of deep work the last few years. So even if you just rest, knowing that is work, because you're just allowing your body to assimilate and to digest the learnings from this year and the last few years. So just, it doesn't have to be a big spiritual practice you do this winter, but just just resting is loads. It allows the things to land. And I have noticed that without me even trying hard this winter, things are just automatically being released. Like the tears are coming, the shadows are making themselves known, and I'm clearing them. It's just, as I said, I don't need to go out doing a big fire ceremony or a big this or that. Sometimes it's just in the simple moments that magic happens, you know. It's actually simplifying it. Like I went over to my priestess teacher's house at Samhain, and we just did a lovely ceremony together. It was only about an hour, but it was so magical because we were so present, and I feel like I did a lot of work in that hour. So it doesn't have to be days or hours, or you don't have to go to a retreat to Greece to just be in your body, you know. Listen to your body, listen to your heart. What does your heart need? And I was reading Eckhart Tolle's book again, as I said, and he talks about being in the body, and I was like, I first read this book years ago. If I just tried to integrate that, you know, I would have cleared a lot. And that was another thing I talked to my teacher about in the retreat, was this like addiction to overdrive that I have, which I'm trying to, which I am neutralizing now and coming into more of a place of stillness. So being in the body. Yes. So I just want to come back to a thread that I started earlier on, but I got so taken away with talking about Kriya Yoga, I forgot where I started. And as a therapist, I love coming back to threads. Maybe people noticed I was talking about abundance in the first half of the episode, and then I mentioned India, Yogananda, spirituality, Indian spirituality, and I went off on that thread when I was talking about the retreat, which was meant to be. Why I was mentioning it at that point was when I was talking about spiritual wealth and the materialism that can be, the addiction to materialism that has really taken us away from source. And I was talking about Ireland, the context in Ireland. Why I was mentioning Indian spirituality at that point, lads, was because the yogis in India, and the same with the Buddhists in Thailand, it was the path of renunciation, especially for the Buddhist monks, the yogis as well, giving up all worldly goods, because that was a distraction from our unification with God. And I just wanted to mention that there, because that's, since my awakening in like 2018, 2019, that's been a big part of my path. And I've probably mentioned this before. When I watched The True Cost, which was about the effect that fast fashion has on the environment, that really woke me up to the addiction to materialism. So a big part of my path, I'm repeating myself now, apologies, has been about releasing that. And the closest to God I've ever felt was when I had the least amount of money ever in my life. And we don't have to live like that forever. We don't have to be Buddhist monks, or nuns. We don't have to give up everything. But there's something very spiritual about feeling abundant within, being grateful for what we already have, and releasing that addiction. I could be going on about this for hours. It's profound. But I'll leave it there. I think you're getting my gist. So Shine Anish Anu, that is it for now, I feel, for today. Some things I wanted to share before I finished up. I will share some links in the description below the podcast on Spotify for some things that I talked about. I did want to mention Angelo. I'm talking about being in the body, trauma in the body, unsafety in the body. I was really hoping to cross paths with someone who I could do this work with. And I came across Angelo's work in February or March this year. I've mentioned him loads. He's incredible. He is phenomenal. I feel like he was one of Jesus's disciples in another lifetime. And I honestly, lads, would not recommend people unless I really fully 100% believed in the work that they do. So he is doing a workshop in the new year called God in the Body. I'm signing up this week. And if you're interested in this sort of healing and work, I'm going to leave the link to that below. He's incredible. And I've seen him work with a couple of people in my life. And I've seen them come home to their bodies and to God. And it's phenomenal to watch and see. So that's a shout out to Michael. Incredible. Excuse me, lads. Excuse me. I'll take a breath there. I also want to do a massive thank you to my subscribers. Thank you so much for supporting my podcast. It means a lot to me. And I do utilise those funds for being able to sign up to things like Angelo's workshop. Everything I earn, I pump right back into myself and the business. So thank you. And if you would like to support my podcast, you can sign up to the subscription. I'll leave the link below as well. I also wanted to mention a 9-week meditative journey that I am starting on this Sunday, the 30th of November, called Emerald Heart. And this is a journey to bring us back into our hearts, utilising the magical, sacred energies of Ireland so that we can really live from our heart, lads, because this holding the flame from the new earth, birthing a new age, we have to be in our hearts. And it is so easy, even for those of us who are deep on the path, to just slip out with the heart. So it's we'll be meeting every week, being in like-minded community to come back to the heart. So I will leave the link to that below. And that's it for today's episode. I really just want to, again, thank you all for your presence and support and love here. And just reminding everyone, lads and ladies, men and women, just to be proud of yourself. You know, to be awake and to be devoted to living a new way from the heart for yourselves, your children, your family. You know, many people in this lifetime won't have the ability to awake to their true nature. We're awake, we're doing it. Be kind, compassionate and patient. You're doing amazing. So sending you a lán grá agus bannacht ó mo Chroí agus ó an talún nefa. Sending love from my heart and the sacred land of Ireland, and I will see you again soon. Slán go fóill.